who don't want to have your face recorded, you can turn off your camera. So yeah, hello and everyone, and welcome to the event. Our conversation about menopause, women's well-being in the workplace. I'm Tracy Xu, senior lecturer in hospitality and in hospitality management from University of Surrey, and I'm chairing this event with Dr. Anka Winchenbach from University of Surrey. And we are in tourism and hospitality, but there is very little attention to this topic, menopause, in our area. So we wanted to hear what the practitioners and the researchers are doing on this topic and bringing this to a wider audience. And this is an ESRC Economic and Social Research Council Festival of Social Science event. And the ESRC Festival of Social Science event is an initiative centered upon bringing the academic research into the public and non-academic populations and enabling the engagement with the practitioners and the policymakers. And we are very delighted to have a range of speakers with us today, including Natalie Beresford, the Detective Inspector and Menopause Project Lead at Thames Valley Police. So welcome, Natalie. And the second speaker is Joe McCarthy-Holland, the Equality, Diversity, and Inclusion Manager at University of Surrey. Welcome, Joe. And the third speaker is Zanny Crow, a registered nutritionist and nutritional therapist. And Zanny runs her own company called Zanny Crow Nutrition. Welcome, Zanny. And our fourth speaker is Eddie Brown, the founder of Greenwich Wellness, Fitness, and Pilates. And Eddie and Zanny are the founding members of My Menopause Companion. So welcome, Eddie. And we also have Dr. Tabitha Pickup, a clinical psychologist at Cambridgeshire, and Peterborough NHS Foundation Trust. So the order is that Natalie and Joe will discuss how organizations can best support women with menopause from the organizational support perspective. And Zanny and Eddie will discuss nutrition, exercise, and relaxation perspectives. And Tabitha will review the research on menopause. And we are really delighted to have such a lot of interest in this event. We not only have female participants, but also a lot of male participants too. So thank you so much for joining us for our event. And the format of the event is that we are going to have 5 presentations, and there's also a Q&A panel at the end. So please do feel free to post comments and questions on the chat during the talks. And at the end of the 5 talks, we will try to address many of your comments or questions. So that brings us to our very first speaker, Natalie Beresford, the Detective Inspector, the Menopause Project Lead at Thames Valley Police. And as you may know that Thames Valley Police is the UK's first menopause-friendly police force. So let's listen to Natalie's talk to get the secret behind this successful story. So welcome, Natalie.
Good afternoon, everyone. And Tracy, thank you for your introduction. Yes, I am Detective Inspector Natalie Beresford from Thames Valley Police. And as you already said, we are the only police force in the UK to currently be recognised as a menopause-friendly employer, and we were recently awarded a prestigious award, which I might just happen to have on display here, at the recent industry awards, where we were recognised as the most friendly, the most open workplace. And that recognised the engagement from our senior leaders down in the work that we're doing on menopause. So Tracy very kindly asked me to just come and speak to you today. I don't have any slides or any presentations, I'm afraid. They just seek to just fuel my menopause confusion if I add them into my conversation. So I am just going to speak to you about a few parts, just a very brief part on what the menopause is. I don't have any medical background or any experience in it, but just a basic kind of guide on what the menopause is, a little bit about the personal impact on me, and then some of the work that we've done in our force to make us menopause friendly. So generally, I always find the easiest way to describe the menopause is almost like a reversal of puberty. So we know that when we're teenagers, our bodies are just filled with hormones, and those hormones are really, really important for our bone density and for our skin and our hair and our fertility and our brains, and basically they're everything we need to be an adult. And then as women at a few different stages in our life, we can transition through the menopause, and we lose those really, really important hormones. Now, the majority of women, we know from the NHS, the majority of women or those born female will naturally transition through the menopause between the ages of 45 and 55, with the actual menopause happening around 51 on average. So that's those that traditionally naturally transition through menopause. And within that period there is perimenopause, which is the events leading up to actual menopause, and those symptoms can last for between 5 to 7 years, and that's when the symptoms first come knocking at our door. It's when we did it throw me out again?
Natalia, are you okay?
Did it throw me out? Sorry.
Okay, good. Yeah, we can hear you clearly now.
Okay, sorry, I don't know why my computer keeps doing it, sorry. So yes, we have the perimenopause, and then when we've gone exactly 12 months at a period, that one day when we've got exactly 12 months, that's the menopause. One day takes credit for all these things it does to us, and then anything after that is postmenopause. So that's that traditional route, the natural route through it. There's also surgical menopause, so individuals that have had surgery, such as a hysterectomy or some hormone-driven cancers, will be thrown into menopause. And then also there's early menopause, premature ovarian insufficiency, and often individuals whose mothers, grandmothers, aunts, sisters, if they've gone through it much earlier, under 40, then there's a slightly higher chance they will. And it brings with it the complications of a slightly increased risk in relation to dementia, cardiovascular disease. Of course, if women are experiencing in their 20s, their 30s, it also brings about infertility and the added stress and anxiety that comes with that. So there's lots of complications around early or surgical menopause too. So that's a real overview. That's not a medical background. That's just a really basic overview for anyone that doesn't quite know what it is. So I'll just give you a little view of my personal account and how we ended up getting to where we are. I was what's called a response inspector, so the police officers that you see out and about in uniform in the marked cars, they're the response officers. So I had a team of 32 PCs and sergeants working out of Reading, so a very busy town, and responding to the most serious incidents. So all the 999 calls, all the kind of violent stuff, the critical stuff, my team were doing that. And at the same time, I almost had like a part-time job as being an on-call detective inspector as well, and that meant that I would, on the duty weekends that I was on call, I'd get phone calls 2, 3 o'clock in the morning for the big serious jobs, the murders, things like that. So I really had to be on my game, and I felt that that's exactly where I was. I was on top of my game. I was achieving all the things I'd wanted to. I'd always wanted to be a detective inspector. I was very proud of the fact that I ran a team in one of the busiest police areas in the force, and it really felt like I was winning at life. And then suddenly I would get to work and I wouldn't know why I was there, and I would park my car and I wouldn't know how to get out of the car park to get into the station, or I'd walk the corridor and I would see people that I've worked for years and years and years, and I couldn't name them. I didn't know what they were called. And when it was my PCs with their numbers on their shoulders, I would very discreetly put their numbers into the computer so that the computer could tell me what they were called, because I couldn't name them. And I genuinely thought I was suffering with dementia. My grandmother was struggling with dementia at the time. She had moments of clarity when she would ask me why she did or said the things that she did, and it felt really similar to what I was experiencing. My symptoms weren't 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They were coming in and out, and I thought, that's it, I've got dementia too. I know now from my research that symptom, that fear of dementia, is the main thing that gets women through the door of their GP surgery, that utter fear and belief that it might be dementia. I had really chronic joint pain. That was really difficult. I did 24-hour shifts, so I did earlys, lates and night shifts, and I had really severe elbow and knee pain. So sitting in the car was uncomfortable, working at the computer was uncomfortable, and it wouldn't go away. I went to the GP, they did MRI scans, they did x-rays, they couldn't find anything wrong with me, they sent me away. I used to lose my words, and I know that when we get to a certain age, this happens to lots of us, but we know that on menopause, it's like it's on steroids. And I would be trying to talk on the police radio, trying to guide my team, direct my team, and I couldn't think of the words, and I'd just start feeling really foolish, and so I'd stutter and stammer on the radio. And I'm supposed to be in charge, I'm supposed to be driving their performance, I'm supposed to be directing them at scenes. And that became really embarrassing, so I would avoid talking on the radio. Someone had previously been really confident and competent. Suddenly I didn't want to talk on the radio. And at the start of every shift, we do briefings. And I didn't want to stand up and briefing my team because I thought I was going to look stupid again, because I was going to lose my words and I thought I was going to be foolish. All these things again, I used to chair quite high-level meetings around serious and violent sexual offenders, and I would chair the meeting, and during COVID, when everything went to Teams and everybody was on the screen, I would struggle to work out who did what, who was called what. I wouldn't recognize their faces, I wouldn't recognize their voices, and I was trying to chair this really important meeting, and I'd want to avoid that, and I couldn't because I was the only person in my area that did it. So all these things kept fueling this anxiety and this fear that I had that I was failing at life, and I had no idea why. My skin would crawl and it would almost be painful. I'd have my stab vest on and my skin would feel like it was crawling under it, and I'd have to try and get my vest off, and it wouldn't calm my skin down. It was like prickly heat all across my shoulders and back. The insomnia was unbearable. I slept for no more than 2 hours a day or night, and on night shifts that was horrendous. I would be running 3 police areas, making critical decisions, and I was on 2 hours sleep. So you can see how this is going to sound really scary to anyone who hasn't experienced the menopause. The idea of us doing things like this is to raise awareness, to make sure that people are prepared for it and they can put stuff in place, instead of doing what I did of just keep trying to survive on adrenaline and hope it would just go away. So please, if you're listening to this and it's worrying you, this is all about raising awareness. I always say to people, if we didn't know the signs and symptoms of pregnancy, we'd be utterly terrified when it happened to us. But because we know what's coming, we don't get terrified, and we congratulate people when they're pregnant instead of thinking of all the fear and the dread of actually what it does to our bodies. So this menopause conversation is just the same. It's just about making sure everyone's ready for it, and menopause is a really normal and easy thing to talk about. Hot flushes, everybody talks about those. They're often mocked. They're actually really difficult when you're supposed to be in charge, when you're chairing a meeting, or you're having a robust conversation with a colleague, or you're at an incident and a hot flush hits you. For me, it would hold me and suspend me. It was like instant heat. It's like when you're on holiday and you step out of the supermarket. It's like that, but tenfold. And that would happen to me when I'm trying to deal with incidents, and I would have no option but to rip my vest off. The stab vest that we have go over our head, so as I pull it off my hair that's neatly up in a bun is also pulled out the way, so my hair is falling out, my face is flushed, my shirt is wet from the hot flush. I've got to take my stab vest off. So again, I'm supposed to be in charge, I'm supposed to be in control. The public look at me to help them, and I'm just desperately trying to cope with a hot flush on duty. Really, really difficult. There's some other awful side effects of menopause, the flow, which is really difficult. That's really heavy bleeding. It's not cyclical like our periods. It never seems to come when you're in the comfort of your own home. It always seems to happen at the most inconvenient time when you're out and about. And it's really difficult to predict and to manage with. So eventually I looked around me at anybody else, my rank, my age, anybody that looked like me, sounded like me, just to see if anyone else was talking about what they were going through, and nobody was. I couldn't see anybody else talking about being impacted in the same way I was, and I thought I was just being a prima donna, I should just get on with it. I know now that's definitely not the case, and that's why we're raising awareness. So I struggled on for a bit longer and eventually caused way more damage to myself than just the menopause alone, trying to survive on adrenaline, being at work for the sake of my team, worrying that people would say, this is why women shouldn't be police officers. This is why we shouldn't promote them. This is why we should never have promoted her, because this is what happens. It was an ingrained fear in me. I joined the police nearly 30 years ago. That might have been the environment then. It's not now. It's a really inclusive, diverse workforce. And I wouldn't have experienced that, but it was an ingrained fear in me, and it stopped me speaking out. And nobody else was speaking out. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I had to question, was I a police officer or was I a woman? And that was a really difficult time in my career. It never happened before that. So I did speak out. I went to my boss. He is male. He was 2 when I joined the police, and I had to tell him all these things that were happening to me. He didn't understand it, but he desperately tried to look to see what we had in place to deal with anyone going through the symptoms of menopause and it impacting on their role within Thames Valley Police. And we couldn't find anything. When we looked at sickness reporting, there was no way to book sick for it. So the force didn't know whether anybody was struggling with menopause. And if they were, they didn't know where they were because there was no sickness reporting. There was also no record made of anyone going to occupational health in relation to it. So it wasn't that anybody was doing anything wrong in our organisation. It was just that nobody was doing anything because there was no data to support that anything needed doing. So I was left in a very difficult situation where I was put through what's called the adjusted duties process. It meant that I get judged against my ability to be a frontline police officer. And what I can and can't do because of my menopause symptoms. And as a result of that review, I was classed as an adjusted duties officer. That classes me as disabled within our organisation. You can imagine how that made me feel, in line with everything I was already experiencing. To be declared as disabled just because I'm a woman was utterly heartbreaking. So again, nobody was doing anything wrong, but nobody was doing anything. So that's when we looked at, where do we start? What do we do? How do we make this better for everybody else in our organisation? First thing we did was look at our workforce in that age group, 45 to 55. How many individuals in our workforce, how many women in our workforce between that age group did we have, and where were they based? So we looked at that. It was almost 15% of our workforce at that point. There was just shy of 1,100 women within our organisation who were that NHS guided menopausal age, and we didn't know where they were or what they were doing. Then it seemed really, really important to look at how many women we had under that age, because now we know about surgical menopause and premature menopause as well. And to be celebrated for us in this organisation, that's 40% of our workforce, 40% of our workforce. And we were mindful that if we didn't address things now, then they would all transition through menopause and nothing would be in place to deal with them and support them. So we set about putting together a menopause action group. Initially, everyone that wanted to be on it was all women of a certain age, and I think we recognised from that after our first meeting that none of us could remember what it was we talked about, and none of us could keep on track, and all we talked about was being menopausal, but not all the rest of the stuff that we could do with it. So I went to all the senior stakeholders within the organisation and asked them all to nominate somebody within their trail, within their portfolio, to join our menopause action group. This gave us full representation across the force. This gave us police officers, police staff. It gave us people of rank, people that were new recruits. It gave us men and women. It gave us everyone from our staff support associations, our women's network, our men's forum, our staff association for minority ethnic, our LGBTQ support network. Every network we had representation on our mag. And that was important for 2 things. It was, one, to get the information coming into us about what everybody needed, where the gaps were, but also making sure the information we got out reached as many people as we could. We made a really, really early decision to everything we do start at the top down. I think so frequently we go into the masses and we start at the lowest level. We did the opposite. We were right in at the top. I asked for an audience with our chief constable and I got one, which I was very surprised at, but I did. I managed to get an audience with the chief constable and I told him everything it was to experience the menopause for me. I told him all those things. I also told him that the workwear that we wear, which is unisex, for anyone that wears unisex uniform, we all know that that just means men's, but available in much smaller sizes. That's all it means. It doesn't fit women. It's no good for women. Men's trousers have a much shorter crotch area. For those of us that were wearing those every day with the double stitching that men have in their trousers, For lots of us, it was causing thrush and cystitis, another kind of side impact of the menopause. And that, of course, brings with it like the risk of urinary tract infection too, just from our trousers. So we had to do some work around our uniform as well. But told the chief constable all of this. And then managed to get myself into every head of department monthly meeting that was being held across our force. If there was a meeting anywhere, I got myself in it to do a half-hour presentation on the menopause and what we needed to do in our force. It wasn't easy. I do it in addition to my full-time job. It's really hard work, but it's paid dividends. We've only been up and running since World Menopause Day 2021. So in less than a year, we've managed to get our menopause friendly employer accreditation and the award, and that's just taken so much hard work just to get in and get the message out. It feels that by doing the personal story, people remember it and they reflect on it. We made a really big decision also, not just to make sure that our menopause action group was populated with a real diverse section of our workforce, but we also wanted to make sure that everything we did targeted not just menopausal women. So we did 5 categories to make sure that all our comms reached those 5 categories. So those going through menopause, what support could we put in place for them? Those yet to go through menopause, how could we raise awareness to make sure that they were ready when the time came and knew where to get the support and the advice from? Supervisors' experience in menopause, my personal experience was it was really, really hard. We all know that the higher we go up in our organizations, the fewer of us there are. So it's not just a case that we can be replaced. What information, what advice do we put in place for our supervisors to make sure they've got support to still do their job? So for us, we look at those that do duty detective inspector, duty superintendent, the on-call stuff, just making sure that they're confident to be able to say, my brain fog is playing up this week. Can you be my tactical advisor? Can you belt and brace my decision making? Can you be my support this weekend? Or to swap their duties around, just making sure that we can put adjustments in place for supervisors to still feel confident to do their job. Then we also wanted to target supervisors who were supervising people going through it, so that they knew what to do and how to look after their staff. And then by no means the least important, probably one of the most important, was to target the men in our organisation. We wanted to make sure that A, they understood it, but B, they felt comfortable in coming into work and being able to say, I am exhausted today. My partner is, one minute she's throwing the quilt on me, the next minute she's pulling it off. She's not sleeping, she's got insomnia, she's got night sweats. I'm not sleeping. I'm the duty sergeant today. I'm the duty superintendent today. I'm a firearms officer, whatever they are. That ability for them to be able to come and say, I'm exhausted, this is how it's impacting me at home. Our relationship seems to be falling apart. I don't recognize her, she's not the one I'm in love with. Her and our teenage daughter are doing this because it's hormones squared. Just an environment where they felt it was okay to come into work and offload. In the same way they would come in and talk about their partner being pregnant. It's okay for them to come into work and talk to other people about the impact of the menopause on their relationship and their life at home. And by focusing on those 5 groups, we were able to make sure that our comms were relevant to all of them, that the level that we're going in at was relevant to all of them, that they all understood their role in needing to understand menopause. The 3 things we aimed at was raising awareness, providing training, and offering support. Those are the 3 things we wanted to do, and we've achieved that across all those areas. We got sickness support reporting in place. This was, of all the things we did, the sickness reporting seems to be one of the most important. It encourages conversation between staff and their supervisors. It gives us measurable data. It also protects our staff. We know that menopause is not a protected characteristic, but we know that the symptoms of menopause at tribunal have been held to be a disability because they go on for longer than 12 months. So for anyone that doesn't know, the menopause is, lasts between 3 and 12 years, or 4 to 10, it depends which bit you read, but it goes on for a long time anyway, and it goes on for longer than 12 months. So the symptoms are protected as a disability. So we made sure that you could report in the umbrella name of menopause, but there were 4 different symptoms that we put underneath, and we made sure one of those was other, so that if the categories we've got aren't right, we'll know from the other category that we've got in there. So by officers and staff able to use that, it gives them some protection around any performance or attendance matters that might arise as a result of their menopause symptoms. It doesn't mean that their sicknesses are recorded. It just means that any processes that may ordinarily get put in place for poor performance or poor attendance, they've got some protection. There's a bit of buffer of that because we can adjust in for their menopause. So the sickness was really, really important, and the same with our occupational health unit. We initially did self-referral to them. This is the only category that you could self-refer to Occy Health. And we did that because initially we didn't have that openness because we were new, but we wanted to make sure that people felt able to seek help if they didn't feel ready yet to speak to their supervisors. So for a temporary basis, for the first 3 to 4 months, you could self-refer to occupational health, and then occupational health would work with the individual and their supervisor to work out what we could put in place for them there. These things were really key. We don't need to do that anymore. Occupational health do clinics. They do a whole day once a month of 8 clinics. They get oversubscribed every month, so they just have to keep putting more and more on. And that's been really useful, and people have used that and dialed into that. That's been really, really key. We have written a menopause policy, but we also wrote a guidance on the side of that as well. Again, we made sure those 3 things, the raising awareness, providing support and offering, providing training and offering support were our key drivers, with those 5 categories of people for us to communicate with. We looked at reasonable adjustments. Everywhere I looked online when I first went through all these symptoms, all I could find was the generic, often grey-haired lady, much older than the 45 to 55 years. And if they were in the workplace, then they would be office-based, working Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. All the guidance I found was open a window, put a fan on your desk. Well, when you're at a crime scene at 3 o'clock in the morning and you're in a stab vest and you're getting hot flushes, or you're flooding, or your skin is crawling, or you have brain fog, there is no amount of open windows or fans on a desk that are going to help you. So it's really important as an organisation that we looked at all our different categories of officers and staff and put reasonable adjustments in place for all those different things. So we looked at our frontline uniform officers alongside the huge long list of menopause symptoms. When we first did it, it was 34, and then it went up to 34 to 68. Now it's over 100. We looked at most of the ones that we could, and we did 4 columns. So we did our frontline uniform officers. What could we put in place to help them? So their line managers could go straight to us and look at it. We looked at front office non-uniform, and then we did the same with back office. So office-based individuals, uniform, office-based individuals, kind of more admin role. And we applied along those columns all the reasonable adjustments we thought would work for them. There's some that you just can't think of a reasonable adjustment for, but we put in what we could. And again, this encouraged transparency between supervisors and staff to talk about what they need, to talk about what can be put in place to keep them in their role, so they don't have to go through that adjusted duties process that I did. We keep them in their role, we keep their skills there, we keep their knowledge there. This is really, really important. We know that 1 in 4 women consider leaving their jobs. We know that 1 in 10 actually do. We also know that 6 in 10 talk about their symptoms having a negative impact. So from the research, only 10% of women won't experience any menopause symptoms at all. I'm yet to meet one of them. I don't want to. I'll be jolly cross when I do. Of those remaining that do suffer with menopause symptoms, 70% report suffering moderate to severe symptoms that will impact on their ability to do their role. It's a really high percentage of people in our force reported presenteeism. That is coming to work when you are not fit to do so because of your menopause symptoms, but being in the workplace anyway. And then around 60% talked about using their holiday, their leave, or their time off to manage their symptoms. So instead of going sick, they were using their annual leave entitlement in order to manage their symptoms. Again, this masks where the issues are. So it's not just about where the individuals are, but what department are they on. So within our force, we know that our contact management, so that the call takers, the radio operators, we know the ones in the control room that you kind of see on the TV and stuff, we know that that's the highest proportion of women aged 45 to 55 in our organisation. So the organisation needs to know they're there because they need to know what extra help does that department need, what extra support do they need. So not just the individuals in it, what do we need to do? Do we need to put more resources into it, more funding? What do we need to do? So as an organisation, it makes it easier for us to know where to put that support and what to do in relation to it. We know that if we don't do it, we know that ACAS say if menopause is mismanaged in the workplace, it costs £1,000 per employee is spent in conflict resolution before it even gets to an employment tribunal. It's really, really important as organisations that we make sure that we've got the right things in place to support our staff and help our organisation know where it needs to pump its funding and its resourcing in relation to it. It's really important that supervisors increase their knowledge and they're proactive in talking about it. We had posters created, we've done webinars, we do monthly webinars. We have engaged the service of menopause specialist GP. We've got her to do a couple of webinars talking to us about what menopause is, what options there are. I sought HRT. That for me was an absolute life changer. It meant that I could manage the big hitters, the big symptoms, the insomnia, the hot flushes, all the big things like that. And it also meant I was able to identify the smaller, more annoying symptoms that I couldn't get rid of. It means I can recognize a pattern of my brain fog. I know that when that kicks in, I've got it for maybe about 3 days, and that means I can talk to my boss about if something is time critical or it's a big decision making thing, or it's on the spot decision making, then perhaps those 3 days are not the days for me to do it, and I delay it to another time. And that's an openness that we have in the workplace that I'm more than happy to share with my bosses, and they understand that. And if it is time critical, then they'll give it to someone else, or it'll just wait until I come back from brain fog 3 days later and land into the normal world until it comes around again. We've got a network of buddies. We got them trained. We've got 50 within the force. They work with individuals to support them and signpost them. But also, more importantly, they work with the individual and their supervisor to work through those reasonable adjustments that we talked about. What's best for the individual, what's best for the team, what's best for the organisation, and they all work together to do that. The buddies have been an absolute lifeline. They've been absolutely wonderful. We've done some nutrition courses, so I'm really intrigued to hear about the nutrition today. I had no idea nutrition was so important to menopause. We've got to learn so much about what we can do to make things better for us. I can talk about menopause forever. The most important thing is that creating an environment where menopause can be spoken about openly and confidently is literally just the right thing to do. And if this is just a start when we all come together and do it, then so be it. But it has to be an everyday word. It has to be openly talked about. It's not going away, and none of us are. We'll all just keep talking about it. I think I've managed to do that with 3 minutes to spare. Do you want me to keep going, or shall I stop now?
Yeah, yes, please keep on.
Okay. For your timetable. So what we do know is that we know that the menopause affects mental health. We know that anxiety is one of the most common symptoms of menopause. For me, the anxiety became self-fulfilling. I would worry that I wasn't taking in information that people were giving me. Then I couldn't like dissect what they were telling me. And we use a cycle, a national decision-making model, which is a wonderful model. Everything I do in the police, I throw around the NDM, as we call it. People will come into me, the intelligence team will come in with some live intelligence. I wouldn't be able to take in what they were saying. The words wouldn't form sentences, they'd just be odd words. And I'd try and throw it around the NDM, and I couldn't, because I couldn't put enough information into it to work through the cycle to make a decision. That became self-fulfilling. So they would come in and I would just assume that I would get it wrong. I wouldn't be able to do what they were doing. I'd never suffered anxiety before. Suddenly it was through the roof. So we know that menopause affects mental health. We know that anxiety is one of the most common symptoms of menopause. We know it affects financial attainment. Lots of people talk about the gender pay gap. We know that the gender pension gap is huge, and is very, very slowly closing, very slowly. And we know that that it can affect diversity at senior leadership. So particularly in the force, when I look at the uniform side of our senior leadership, it is predominantly male. We're trying to understand whether the menopause stops women going for promotion. The College of Policing are looking into it, and I'm tied in with them on that. So that's really, really important work. So for any organisation, it's worth looking at your senior leadership. Is there diversity there? Is there something that's stopping women going for promotion and reaching that senior level that they want to do? We know that many, when they reach senior level, leave because of that embarrassment around the brain fog, around the inability to make decisions, around that fear that in front of our teams we're suddenly looking diminished and small and tiny, and we want to just disappear into the wallpaper. So that's really important for organisations to look at too. I think without me going on to 101 other topics, that probably is an ideal place to start. We're 14:34, so I'm 1 minute off it. So I hope that that's been useful. I hope that that's covered the kind of stuff that you wanted me to. I know I talk very quickly. I hope that you've understood me, but thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Natalie, for your inspiring talk and the story that you shared to us. And it's really very hard work to best support menopause, isn't it? Right? And please, for the audience, please post any questions or comments if you have any for Natalie. And we also have a supporter, Louis Smith, and Louis is promoting the event and will take notes for this webinar as well. So thank you, Louis. And our next speaker is Joe McCarthy-Holland. And Joe is our Equality, Diversity and Inclusion manager. So he's our EDI manager at University of Surrey. And she is going to talk through the menopause support at University of Surrey. And as you may be aware that at Surrey, we have a menopause project, and it's the university initiative focusing on the support for those who are experiencing menopause at work and at study. So let's listen to Joe's talk about this. So Joe, you can share your screen.
Thank you, Tracy. I'll just share that now. Okay, can everybody see that okay and hear me okay? Wonderful. So thank you, and thank you, Natalie. That was really inspiring to hear the depth of work that's going on in the police force there. Really amazing stuff. So thank you as well for the opportunity to come and share what we're doing at the University of Surrey. As Tracy said, my name's Joe McCarthy-Holland. I'm the Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Manager. And alongside other areas of equality, I am particularly passionate about the menopause work. And being able to support women and see the impact of the knowledge increasing, the conversations happening, and just the way that that positively impacts women. So I'm going to just talk us through really starting with the what. So what I want to cover today is to really start with what we're doing. Why are we doing this project? Why is menopause even a thing? Why is everybody talking about it? How are we going about it? So when we look at our journey, I'd say we're relatively early on in the journey, but I'm going to talk us through what Surrey's doing and how we've gone about it so far. And then a really, really important aspect of this work is about inclusion and representation, and making sure that we understand who we're supporting and that they feel that their voices are being heard and seen in this space as well. And then I'll just look at the next steps and how we can take this forward as a community of people, hopefully all passionate about bringing support to the people that we come into contact with and our communities. So starting with the what is it that we're doing? What are we trying to do? What's our mission, our vision, our goal? It's important to know where we're heading so that we can put things in place to get there. And so in starting to think about this, we wanted to capture really in a nutshell what we're aiming for. So this is our project vision and mission. And it's to say at the University of Surrey, we are really committed. We want to build that inclusive and that supportive and thriving community. And it forms part of our broader equality, diversity and inclusion work and our wellbeing agenda. And it brings people together and resources to help every member of our community to feel valued and to achieve their potential. So we're focusing on providing that support for everyone impacted and aiming to break down the taboo, make it normal for people to talk about menopause and their symptoms without fear of ridicule, as Natalie was talking about, just removing that stigma and that embarrassment and that sense of being judged and not being good enough. And we want to help people really to live their life to the absolute full. And that, in a nutshell, that's what we're trying to achieve at Surrey. So moving on from the what, why are we doing this? Where's this all coming from? Is it really relevant? Is it relevant to the workforce? And we've already heard about that. So there's 100 reasons really why we want to focus on this work. But the rationale for us is really starting with the demographics. National data tells us that menopausal women are the fastest growing workforce demographic in the UK. And that 75 to 80% of women of menopausal age are in work. So with that average age of 51 being the point at which most women experience menopause, and everybody's different, plus the perimenopausal symptoms starting 5 to 7 years prior to that, many women are experiencing this whilst they're at work. And again, we've heard some of these stats already, but 6 in 10 are saying that they've had such negative symptoms that are impacting on their work. And then 1 in 4 that it's so bad that they're thinking of giving up. And that's horrendous. We don't want to lose women from the workplace. And just to give some kind of social context here, it's really interesting to see that back in 1920, so the average age of menopause was happening around 57. Women were living on average until they were 59. So they were dealing with menopause for a couple of years. And if we look now, women are experiencing menopause around 51. They're on average living to 83. That's 32 years of experience. And a lot of that time they are still working. So things have changed. And if we do hear people saying, oh, you know, we coped back in 19 whenever, well, that's fine. But actually we're moving forwards. We want people to feel that they can reach out and get what they need to support them. And 1 in 6 women will live to be 100 or more. So let's really take on board those stats and think about that and the impact of that. At a local level, as a university, we're very aware of our own demographics and data, and the fact that women talk to us about their experience. So the power of that anecdotal evidence is really clear. The power of the human narrative, that story that outlines to us what people are dealing with on a day-to-day basis, is more powerful in a way than the numbers. And just to be able to hear that story and respond to that appropriately is really important. We've got our legal case. So we, under the Equality Act and under the Health and Safety at Work Act, we have a legal duty to make those supports and those adjustments. And so if there wasn't just the legal imperative, that would be enough. But there's a whole load of reasons why, as a university, we want to do our bit. We want to take our social and moral responsibility seriously, and also our opportunity to make a difference and to reach people in our community and in our networks and beyond. Something I really want to impress as well on you as an audience is that this doesn't make women weak. So sometimes we've been asked, actually, is this good for women? Why are you talking about women in this way? This isn't about weakness. This is about empowerment. This is about giving people the ability to overcome symptoms and be strong again. If there's any sense of weakness whatsoever, it's in organisations that fail to act. So I really want to say this isn't about women being weak. This is about supporting them to just be their very best and to address human need that is going to manifest in all sorts of different ways for different women. So just to build on that business case, so the significant benefits for the university and actually for all organisations who choose to focus some attention on this work. It's about reducing time off. So we want to keep women in work. We want them to feel that they can perform, that they can be motivated and do their best. We want to keep them and attract new people who think, wow, I want to work for that organisation because they are thinking about these things. They're going there. We want to reduce our recruitment costs. We want to reduce the risk of employee relations issues. Again, Natalie referred to that and the cost of that, huge financial implications of that. And we want all of our workforce to thrive. And we want all of our workforce to stay with us, and we want to retain that talent and see the investment from building up our staff and making sure that people have what they need. And just really to say this can be life-changing. This is really where it's at. That if we give staff and students what they need in this respect and understand kind of with compassion the human experience and give people the support that they need to thrive in work and in study, that's making a huge difference both here at the university and in their home lives and in their home relationships. So a bit more on Surrey and where we're at. How are we going about it? So I created this mnemonic to try and simplify things, and it stands for spin. And actually it kind of recognizes that for some women, menopause is like going through the spin cycle of a washing machine. So just to bear that in mind, and hopefully it's simple to remember. But really, again, thinking about senior buy-in. So you need to have the understanding, the commitment, the kind of license to proceed from the very top of your organisation. So if you can get senior buy-in, that really goes a long way in instilling confidence amongst your community. Policy or guidance, you need to know what you stand for, and just to outline that in a very clear document and make sure that's widely understood and widely known. Information, that counts in lots of different ways. So information for women, so they know what's going on. Information for managers, so they know how to support and where to point people to. Information in the form of resources and really good confidence building information. And the N is network. So this is a network. We're sharing our story together, kind of spreading the word. We want to network women together in their peer support networks. We want to make sure managers feel that they're part of a network. And so networks is really, really crucial. And I think that's what's happening here. We're gradually spreading the love about menopause and making sure people feel connected in. So I just want to talk about a bit more on the how. So what are the tools that we're using at Surrey? We have a number of tools. This is a snapshot from our web pages, and I'm going to talk through them individually in a moment. But we were helped along on our journey by Henpicked, the organisation. So right at the beginning, 3 of us were sent off to be on their Train the Trainer course, including myself. And they really kind of laid out the different stepping stones to get us started. So we've built on that work and thrown some time and a bit of resource at this and come up with these key ingredients. So if I can just run through these were all captured in an action plan at the beginning that had sign off from our EDI executive board. So they knew exactly what we were aiming to do, and that gave us real license to push this work. So if I can just talk through some of these. So first up, we had our creation of some policy, some guidance, and this really sets out our bottom line, what we're standing for around menopause at Surrey, just removing all doubt, making sure people are clear on what this means and how we can support and provide those adjustments. And it's designed for all women, all people who need those adjustment supports, to be able to carry out their jobs and feel safe whilst they're doing that, and feel that we've got their back. And the second key document is a toolkit. So this toolkit is for everybody. It's for people that are going through menopause to explain what's happening. It's for managers who want to have, if not sensitive conversations with their member of staff, that they just know what's going on, that they've got some intelligence and some compassion and some awareness around the topic, and that they know where we can provide support to them. And it's also for people that are family members or peers, that there is something in there that everybody can read and take away so that they are tooled up and they know what's going on. There's things in there about capturing your symptoms, about how to have a conversation with your GP, about how to address the conversations with your colleagues. So hopefully that's been a really useful toolkit and just gives that little bit of help and information. Oh. You can see that. So a few other things that we've got in place. We've got a menopause support network. This is an online Teams support area where people can just share information, share their ideas, ask questions, and it's a point of contact really for us to keep people informed with what we're doing. That's open to anybody who wants to join that network. We hold monthly menopause cafes in different forms across the university. And again, it's just a very informal and safe space for women to come along and share their thoughts. A really, really important thing to note is that we're not claiming to be menopause medical experts. We don't push the solutions onto people. We're not saying, if you do this, that will fix you. This is very much about individual experience and recognizing that actually all women experience this differently. There is commonality and there are things to be aware of. But just because I might experience one thing doesn't mean somebody else is going to have exactly the same reaction to any treatments. It's really, really dangerous to push solutions. So we're very, very mindful of that. But it does give people license to talk. And we've had very, very senior women come to those cafes and say, I have never shared this with anybody else. And it's actually really powerful to be able to provide that space that's safe, that's not judgy, that people can say, don't worry, here's a tissue, have a cup of tea. I want to talk you through this and I'm here to listen. And that gives people just that little bit of wraparound care and compassion for them as they go through something that can be pretty scary and pretty daunting. We've got a team of menopause advocates, so they really are a listening ear, so they can be available for one-to-one sharing and discussion. Not everyone wants to join a network, not everybody wants to come to a cafe, and really I guess it's about having different options for different types of people. So we all do things differently. Sometimes you just want a very quiet, discreet chat with somebody that can help you. So that's on offer, and I'm really grateful to those champions, those advocates who are passionate and committed and willing just to be there, and they help to champion the cause. So they're having conversations around the university to highlight what we're doing and how important it is. We've got an events programme. We recently invited Karen Arthur, who you may know from the Davina McCall Sex Myths and the Menopause programmes. She was an absolute fantastic guest, and she talked us through her own story and a real focus on well-being and positivity, and actually there is life after menopause. And she was really, really inspiring, really, really wonderful person to share some time with. And we hope to have lots of other events featuring people that can just inspire conversation and evoke more interest, I guess, in the subject, and make sure that we're covering lots of different things and understanding what's going on out there. So that's another key ingredient. And lastly, just to talk about research. So we've got a number of academics at Surrey involved in menopause research, whether that's in the psychology department, health sciences, biomedicine, nutrition. And that's a really key thing. We want to make sure that we can showcase what's going on with their research and just keep building on that. And we also won a Bid for Better project funding in a collaborative bid with the Royal Surrey County Hospital. And the aim there is to really make a big difference to staff and patients at the Royal Surrey, and to share best practice between the university and the hospital. We've got a fantastic research team spearheading that project: Daniela Jones, Dr. Catherine Cohen-Kadosh and Dr. Karen Morton from the Royal Surrey County Hospital, and we're really excited about the opportunities that are growing there just to build impact and draw together some really great resources. So now a quick slide about inclusion and representation, although I think this is one of the most important slides in my pack here. So we really want our project to be able to recognise and embrace diversity. And this means thinking about the experience of people from a range of different backgrounds, and understanding that people engage differently with this kind of a project, and that there are cultural differences and things that will impact the way that people understand what we're putting across here. So in both our language that we use, in the images that we use, in the action plan, in the resources, we really want people to recognise that we can see them, we can hear them, that they can be seen in what we do, and that we are giving thought to that and understanding the different needs. One of the things that I'm particularly passionate about is the fact that socioeconomic status comes in. Whilst it's not a protected characteristic, it's really relevant in the current time. The cost of living crisis is a real issue for people. It's a real challenge, and not everybody will have a middle class menopause. So the idea that not everybody has the money to spend on a gym membership or a spa retreat or an expensive prescription or homeopathy, and just to be really cognizant of that not everybody has the same experiences or the same access to different things. So to make sure that that's coming across in some of the solutions and the adjustments that we put forward, just to recognise that and help people to be able to make changes without huge amounts of cost and the implications of that. Karen Arthur, who we recently invited, she rightly recognised that there needs to be spaces for women to see and hear themselves, and to be represented in spaces online, and in organisations. And she addresses this in her Menopause Whilst Black podcast. She places the menopausal experiences of Black UK-based women at the very front and centre and gives a space for sharing their stories. So it's just an example of the way that we need to think and tailor some of our work to really engage with a broad spectrum of our community. And if we want to make progress, we need everybody on board, which means engaging in creative and clever and thoughtful ways. So in terms of next steps, I hope that we can continue this conversation. There's lots of conversation going on about this. And I'd encourage you just to keep learning what's on offer. It's great that you're here today, and just there's so many amazing organisations that can feed you with great knowledge and great resources. So Henpicked is a good one. Newson Health is another one, and there's lots more. Keep sharing ideas and research, and together we can facilitate change. And I'd be very, very happy for you to contact me if you want to have more information about what we're doing. And you may have noticed the lotus flower dotted around on our resources and things. And just as I come to an end, I wanted to say that the significance of the lotus flower is that it differs amongst different cultures, but generally speaking, it's revered as a symbol of strength and rebirth and purity. And it's able to emerge from murky and muddy waters and to be a flourishing, beautiful flower. So it's a positive symbol that I hope encapsulates our approach and our vision to really pursuing this work. So as I end, I'd say the time is now. Be part of the national and the global conversations that are going on, and let's build momentum and see positive change for all of those that are impacted by the menopause. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jo. And as you said, that we should continue the conversation, right? And also keep sharing the ideas and the research on menopause. And the questions for Jo will be answered at the end of the webinar. And next, let's welcome Zanny Crow. And Zanny is a registered nutritionist and nutritional therapist. And Zanny runs her own company called Zanny Crow Nutrition. And Zanny is the founding member of My Menopause Companion, which is an online program gives you the tools to manage your menopause. And Zanny will discuss the nutritional approach to menopause symptoms. So welcome, Zanny.
Thank you, Tracy. I'm just going to put my slides up. Can you see them? Yeah. So as Tracy said, I'm going to be talking about a nutritional approach to menopause symptoms. And my name is Zanny, and I'm a registered nutritionist and a nutritional therapist. And I'm also a founding member of My Menopause Companion. And we are an expert advice and support group, which has been founded by Ellie, who's going to present today as well, and myself, and also by Dr. Kate McCarthy, who is a gynecologist and a menopause specialist, and who set up a menopause clinic at Lewisham Hospital. And Lorraine Nicole, who is a nutritional therapist and nutritionist like myself, an award-winning one. And she's also an author and an educator. And we run community programs, and we also run corporate programs for businesses. And then we're really proud, as I think I've seen in the chat group Elias already put in, we are also proud to be working alongside the NHS, where we are supporting their primary health care professionals with what we believe is the best menopause training. So it's this holistic approach to menopause health and well-being. So I'm going to be just talking about how we run our program and the nutrition that we include and the nutrition advice that we include in our program. So it's going to be quite a condensed version of the advice that we give in our program, because they're a lot longer than the time I have today. And we do this alongside lifestyle and medical management as well. So why does nutrition matter during the menopause? And I think Natalie was talking about it as something that's important in their support in their workplace as well. And nutrition plays a key role in supporting a healthy life. But during the menopause, when our hormones start to decline, we have to work a little bit harder. and things than we did when we were younger. And the more we understand and how nutrition plays a role into this, the better or more positive changes we can make. You know that making the right food choices can improve our health and well-being through the menopause transition and beyond. But actually, the earlier, Natalie was talking about speaking to people that are before they're perimenopausal as well. We're actually making some of these changes before you hit the perimenopausal age is also really important, because that puts you into a better position when you start the transition as well. There is also a sense of empowering and empowerment of being able to take control of your health with health and nutrition when everything else seems to be quite turbulent. There are some actual practical changes that you can make to your well-being by eating healthy nutrition. So as an aim, when I see clients in my practice, but also when we run our programs is and our workshop, is to give the tools to the people that attend to make the right choices for them for hopefully a much healthier and happier menopause. So this, so during our program, we look at the main symptoms that are caused by the menopause transition, and we advise what key nutrients are needed to support these symptoms. And these are the symptoms that we address in the program. So we're talking about bones and joints. So healthy bones and joints. Natalie was talking about having sore joints and bones as one of her symptoms, and it's really important, can really affect our well-being. We're also talking about how to support healthy weight management. And we're not talking about dieting, and we're having a positive attitude to our body here. It's not about being in a certain weight, but it's about being in a healthy weight that supports our health and well-being. We're talking about the mind and memory and mood symptoms, so foggy brains and losing our memory, and anxiety and depression as well, and how we can support this, and also sleep problems, which is on the rise as we go through the menopause. We also looking into genitourinary symptoms, so that's vaginal dryness, it's UTIs, it's cystitis, all of these symptoms that are actually often underreported because a lot of women are not very happy about talking about them for different reasons. And then we also addressing vasomotor symptoms, so that is hot flushes and night sweats, and which are very common during the menopause. And we're also addressing inflammation, and inflammation happens or there is an increase in inflammation in our body as we lose estrogen, and that can be a driver and a trigger for a lot of these symptoms. So it's something that is we're addressing with nutrition as well. So what are the nutritional advice that we give? And again, I'm going to really condense what we are going to be talking about in the program. But we talk a lot about protein, because protein is really crucial as a part of a healthy, balanced diet and to support a lot of the menopausal symptoms. So I put here 3 times a day. I mean, we have to have protein with every meal. If we also need it in snacks. So if you're somebody who needs a snack, we also make sure there's protein in that. And we need protein because we need to support strong and healthy bones. We need that to prevent osteoporosis, which is on the rise for women when they're postmenopausal, for ligaments, tendons, and joints to keep them really going and keep them healthy and strong and less creaky and less painful. We also need protein to make sure that we slow down the rate of muscle loss, and this is called sarcopenia, which happens with age. Muscles are really important to keep our body healthy and strong, which is something that Ellie will be talking about, but it's also important to support a basic metabolic rate, and that is the amount of energy we're using when we are keeping still. So that's important for healthy weight management as well. We need protein to make brain chemicals, and that's really important for good cognition, mood, and memory. So really important for those brain foggy moments at work to have enough protein to support this as well. And again, to support our healthy blood glucose balance. And that is really important to maintain good energy, because if we're on a blood glucose roller coaster and we're eating a lot of refined, high sugary food, our blood sugar and energy goes up and down. And when we're feeling these crashes, our energy goes down and we are not able to function as well, and also affects our mood. But it also is important to feel full. Protein is a very it gives us satiety, so that feelings of fullness, and that's important for healthier weight management as well. And we need it for our mucous membrane. So our mucous membrane is in our gut and in our vagina, in our urinary tract and our nose and lungs and sinuses. So it's really important to support this. And when we lose estrogen, we need to support this extra with nutrition. So the protein that we need is that we need complete protein. So that means that we get all the essential amino acids that a complete protein consists of. And we need essential amino acids from food sources because our body cannot produce these. So we can get these from animal sources. They're always complete. And another thing that is a complete protein source is soy. So that's the only complete plant-based protein. So soy is things like edamame beans, tofu, soy milk, tempeh, miso, and those other things. But we can also get it from plant-based protein, but we need to make sure that these are combined. That means that we add two proteins, plant-based protein sources together to make it complete. So that's really important for any person that is on a vegetarian and vegan diet to be aware of this. So things like adding whole grains to nuts, so having your porridge with some nuts on top, or having beans and pulses for whole grains and nuts. So if you're eating a vegetable dal, you add a whole grain rice to it. That's just something to be aware of, particularly for people on a vegan and a vegetarian diet. And then we need roughly about 0.8 grams of protein per kilo weight. Or actually, research suggests that we should have even more of this as for the perimenopausal and menopausal and postmenopausal women. So maybe up to 1 kilo to 1.2 grams. But a much easier way to measure this is to make sure that there's protein with every meal, as I mentioned, but also think about having roughly a quarter of the meal comes from a protein sources. And a lot of people don't consider this as important, but it is. And then we need to eat plenty of plant-based food. And this is, as a nutritional therapist, I suggest to aim for 8 portions of vegetables and about 2 portions of fruit. So that's more than the government recommended guidelines, but that's because all of these these food sources contain so many different nutrients that our body needs. We can also include lots of nuts and seeds, beans and lentils, and whole grains and herbs and spices. And that is because these types of food contains a lot of dietary fibers, and this is really important to support good gut health. Good gut health is something that can take up a whole presentation on its own. There's something that's really important for our overall well-being. But in short, we need these dietary fibers to support our gut and our gut microbiome. And that is because the gut microbiome, which is the collection of bacteria that lives in our gut, supports many different parts of our body, including blood sugar management, inflammation, weight, healthy bowel movements, of course. Also reduce inflammation to support our mind and our mood and our joints. So adding lots of plant-based food to our diet can support all of these symptoms. Dietary fibers also keep us fuller for longer. And again, we support our energy by having lots of these and a healthy weight. They also contain micronutrients, and micronutrients is vitamins and minerals, and phytochemicals, which is what is also referred to as antioxidants and plant and anti-inflammatory compounds. So the more of these, the better, and the more we can support our health and well-being. Healthy fat is also incredibly important. A lot of people stay away from fats, and that's not good for our health. So we need to make sure we have healthy fat with our diet, because we need this, again, for our healthy blood glucose levels to support our energy throughout the day. It's really important to support our mind and mood symptoms. It's to make sure that our brain chemicals work works well. It also induces inflammation and is important for hormone production, which of course is important to support during the menopausal transition, because we want to support the production of hormones as we go through this. We also needed to facilitate some vitamins that we find in our food. So adding fat to our meals is really important for our health and well-being. And these are some of the types of fat that we recommend adding, because these are the good and healthy fat sources. So this picture shows nuts and seeds and olive oil. Olive oil is a really key nutrient, so really good to cook with. Coconut oil, avocado. Eggs and organic dairy is saturated fat, which some people want to avoid, but actually we need this fat, and that can be a really good fat in our body as well. And then we need essential fatty acids that we get from oily fish, and we can get it from these seeds called flax and chia seeds as well, which is a plant-based version of essential fatty acids. Then there's a couple of other key nutrients that we talk about in our program, because these individually supports different symptoms in our body. So we have the calcium. We know, a lot of us know that we need calcium to support our bones, but we actually need to support this with vitamin K and vitamin D as well, to really make sure that our bones are in optimal health. Vitamin K we can get from two types of cheese, Jarlsberg and Emmentaler, and we can get it from fermented soya beans, which is can be a bit difficult to get hold of and maybe an acquired taste. Not everybody wants to eat that. We can supplement it as well. And vitamin D is a sunshine vitamin, so we get that from sunshine in the summer months, but we can also supplement it, and we can get it from a few dietary sources as well. Plenty of magnesium. Magnesium is found in unprocessed whole food. And then we need vitamin A, folate, vitamin C, and zinc. So I can provide a handout for where we can get these sources from, because it's a lot of information to take in. So I can send a handout to everybody if they would like to know where we can get this from. But overall, if we're following a healthy, balanced diet from whole food sources, so that's unprocessed plant foods, whole grains, nuts, seeds, and all of these things that I mentioned, we get a lot of these nutrients in these foods, and we add that with optimal protein and healthy fat, and we would most likely find that we have a much healthier and happier menopause transition from and beyond from this. So this is something that I think a lot of us feel familiar with. That's that afternoon crash. What should we do? Should we have a coffee or a nap? However, I would argue if we eat, and this is a bit blurry, but if we eat something like this during the day as a part of our diet, if this is how our diet look like, we're much less likely to experience that crash in the afternoon. Quick tips how to get started, because I know that sometimes this nutrition feels a bit overwhelming, and how do we actually implement this into real life? So pre-prepare, batch cook is a really amazing thing to do. Breakfasts can be pre-prepared the night before. If you cook a meal, cook extra so you have it on a really busy day, so you have healthy food on a busy day. Think about having jars with seeds and nuts available. Tins and pouches with cooked legumes and grains is excellent to add into things. Stock up on frozen fruit and vegetables. It's more cost efficient here when prices have gone up. It's a way to avoid food waste as well, and it's highly nutritious, so it's absolutely fine to have them frozen. Think about having healthy snacks on hand also when you're out. So nuts and seeds are great to have as a snack when you're out, if your energy is falling and you are at work. Add that with a piece of fruit and you'll come a really long way. And think about not having temptations around. So if you're somebody who snacks a lot on biscuits and things, and not having them in the house is a good way to avoid the temptation. So this is just a quick summary. I think I've run out of time, but these are the things that we can, that I spoke about. Make sure there's protein 3 times a day, plant-based foods from a variety of sources, and healthy fat, and have a healthy plate.
Thank you so much, Sandy.
Yeah.
And I also now have a good understanding of what you eat on a daily basis. And also many participants in the chat posted that if you can share a handout, that would be very useful. Yeah, thank you, Zanny.
Thank
And
you.
next, let's welcome Eddie Brown. And Eddie is a fitness and well-being coach. Eddie is the founder of Greenwich Wellness, Fitness and Pilates. It's a very unique wellness business built upon health, happiness, and trust and compassion. And Eddie is also a founding member of My Menopause Companion. And Eddie will share some insights and practical tips about how the exercise as well as the breathing and relaxation techniques can support well-being and reduce stress and anxiety during the perimenopause and menopause. So welcome, Eddie.
Thank you, Tracy. I'm just going to share my screen. Let's see if I can get this up. Ooh. So one of my strengths is not IT. Should I come out of that?
Let me. It's still not showing. How about I have yours and I can share on my screen. Share my screen.
It should be. Can I come out? Okay, let me stop sharing again. I'll try to share again.
Okay.
Okay, bear with me, everyone. Bear with me too. I practiced this today as well.
Yeah.
It's rather disappointing.
Mm.
Okay. Okay. My sharing screen is paused for some reason. Bear with me 2 more secs. See if I can get it up here. Yay! Is that it?
Yeah.
Does everyone see it?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. So, I'm Ellie Brown. And so, thank you, Tracy, for introducing me. I've been working in the menopause space now for, oh my gosh, quite a few years, about 7 years. And it's really interesting to hear your story, Natalie, actually, because when I started working in this space, I started working with one of our menopause companions called Lorraine, who is one of our nutritionists on our program, and we set up a menopause program to support women going through the menopause. And they were we kind of set them up as one-day retreats to talk about all things menopause, being in a really safe space where people could talk about how they felt and what they were going through. But when we started to talk about people about this program we were going to put on, nobody wanted us to mention the word menopause. It was like it was a subject that people didn't really want. They wanted to talk about it, but they didn't want to say the word menopause. So we called it Thrive Alive, and it was a way. I love the word empowering, because exactly that, Joe. It was empowering women, but I think it was really difficult. People weren't ready for it, really. They were still too embarrassed to talk about the menopause. So kind of now down the line, you know, hearing the stories, hearing what you're doing, Joe at Surrey, hearing what you're doing, Natalie, is really inspirational. And it's so good to see that we have come this far. So as we get older, the smart woman knows the importance of working out. So let's talk a little bit about how you can support yourself as you approach the menopause, perimenopause, and as you go through the menopause, and also beyond. Don't forget, it kind of doesn't stop. We want to, we want to be strong and powerful, throughout to end of life. And actually, what can we do to help ourselves, and how we can kind of maintain our strength, not just our physical strength, but we want to talk about also our mental strength and how we can support ourselves. So first of all, I know, interestingly, Joey, what you're saying is that, we have to do something that is accessible for all. And I think this is where, in terms of exercise, it can be accessible for all. We don't have to join a gym. We don't have to join expensive gyms. Absolutely not. I think for me, it's all about finding a program that is suitable for you, that works for you. Because if you don't like gyms, don't buy a gym membership. If you don't like cycling, don't buy a bike. If you, so you need to find the thing that works for you. And there is lots out there. And if you think, we'll talk a little bit about kind of the variation later, but things like dancing, dancing makes you feel so good. We can all dance. So, there's so much that we can do here. So variation is the key. And Zanny did that lovely picture earlier It was the one of a plate of food with all different variation of food on it in different colours and different sources of food. And I think of exercise a little bit like that. It's just not one thing works. It's a variation that your body needs. It needs a little bit of everything to keep it strong, mentally and physically strong. So what does it need? It needs resistance. It needs resistance training for bone health, and we'll talk a little bit about bone health in a moment. It needs a little bit of cardio for weight management. We're not talking about weight loss because we're talking about body positivity here. It's not about, you know, weight loss for me. I think about it's about weight management. It's making you find a weight that you're happy with, your own weight. Balance. We know that balance is key. We know that looking at balance can really help with longevity. So that's important that we work on our balance. Mustn't forget pelvic floor. Absolutely mustn't forget pelvic floor. And we'll do a few little pelvic floor exercises later. And also we need to walk more. We need to move a little bit more. We're so sedentary, especially after COVID, when a lot of us were working from home, and a lot of us have got out of kind of moving more. And even adding a little bit of movement into your day can make a massive difference. And we're going to talk a little bit about zone 2, which is this zone, this kind of exercise zone, which is how, without exerting ourselves, so we don't have to run, we can again increase our longevity. So talking quickly about zones. Zone 1 is kind of hanging around home, getting up, making a cup of tea, sitting down. Zone 5 is being chased by a pack of wolves. And we're talking about this kind of zone 2 cardio, okay, where we can walk or cycle a bike while talking. Okay, so let's move on to the next slide. So we talked about resistance training and how why resistance training. Why is resistance training important that we add to our mix, our plate of exercise? So resistance training, talking about high and low, is important for musculoskeletal health, for bone health, and helps prevent osteoporosis. Now, we've talked a little bit about osteoporosis later. And what is osteoporosis? So osteoporosis is where your bones lose strength over time, and estrogen plays a hugely important role in this. Don't forget, men and female lose bone mass, but for women it's much more because of the role of estrogen in our bodies. And during the menopause we have low estrogen levels, as you know, and this can lead to porous and weak bones. So we need to do activities that put stress on the bones, that can nudge these bone forming cells, osteoblasts, into action. And what kind of exercises do we need to do for resistance training? Well, resistance training is anything where you push or pull against resistance. So dumbbells, kettlebells, weighted bars, resistance bands, but also your body weight. So yoga and Pilates are fantastic for this as well. So I've just got a couple of things here. So when we talk about resistance, can you see what this is? Anyone see? It's a can of beans. You can use a can of beans. So again, Joe, talking about how you can do this at home. You can do this well, I say you do it in your workplace. Do you have a can of beans in your workplace? Probably not. But do you have something heavy in your workplace? So you can do cans of beans. When we talk about dumbbells, I've got a dumbbell here. So this is a dumbbell that you can use. Resistance bands, these are these kind of resistance bands here that you can work with, and these are fantastic because you can have these around the house. They don't get in the way, you don't trip over these, and these are resistance bands. And then obviously you can get into more expensive equipment if you want to start to work with more. I've got a weighted bar here which I'll talk a little bit about later, but if you want to have a kind of a home gym, you can do that. But you can also have a home gym by using a pair of tights resistance as a resistance band, and you can also use your cans of beans. Okay, so resistance training is really key. And now we need to know kind of, right, we've got resistance training, we need that for bone health. We know that we can use weights and we can use body weight. So what kind of exercises do we need to do for resistance training? So we've got low resistance training. So this is where we talked about using lighter weights and more reps. Okay, so lighter weights and more reps. And then these could be things like, I'll do it here. I'm not going to do a big session today. So I'm just going to do, so you can do things like, you know, these are your bicep curls. And then these are your triceps, so taking things behind you, and these triceps as well. So it's kind of working the muscles of the arms. So this is kind of maybe 5 little exercises that are low intensity. Now, when we talk about high intensity, we're talking about much heavier weights. Now, many years ago, it was looked upon that women shouldn't lift heavy weights. No, we shouldn't lift heavy weights because it's dangerous. It's dangerous for their frame, and they're kind of worried about kind of bone density. But now, after the Lift More study, it's shown that actually heavier weights but kind of less reps is really helpful and really helps support bone density in your lumbar spine and your hips. And that's where when they do the DEXA scan, that's where they test for bone density in your lumbar spine and in your hip. And that's doing these 3 exercises 5 times and 5 sets. And this is using, you can either use heavier weights, and this is a 1.5 kg weight, and we would probably use around 3 kg or 5 kg, or if I can find it here, excuse me a second, I'm just going to grab my bar. I'm not in the studio today, I'm at home, so this is a weighted bar. Okay, so you would use this weighted bar for these 3 exercises. Now, obviously you don't have a weighted bar, some of you at home, so some of these kind of Lift More exercises might not suit you, or you might not want to do them, which is absolutely fine. You might think, actually, that's not where I want to live, and that's absolutely fine. But it shows that you can lift heavier weights if you wish. What I would say is anything to do with heavy weights, don't do it on your own for the first time. Work with a trainer who understands exactly what your body needs. Make sure that you're in the right position. Let's kind of move on from your high and low intensity resistance training. And we'll go into aerobic training. So this is aerobic training. This is when we talk about weight management and how your body needs this bit more kind of what we call cardio exercises, where it increases the heart rate and assists with your weight management, and also can help to relieve anxiety. And if you're new to exercise, we all say to start gradually and build up intensity over time. Don't rush out and run a marathon, start off, because you might get injured. And also the NICE guidelines say moderate aerobic exercise, 150 minutes a week or 75 minutes of intense activity. So in terms of exercise, it's also just not about weight management, it's bone health, but it's also mental health. So some of these exercises here that we talk about, low impact, swimming, cycling, Nordic walking, rowing, dancing, so but really good for your mental health as well. Some people say they love running because it's good, it gets them out there, it's good for their mental health. But these low impact aerobic activities, what we call in the zone 2 often, so you're not raising too much your heart rate, you can talk, so it can be social, it can be something that you do with other people. And then you're talking a bit more about the high impact aerobic activity. So this is when you go into the zone 3+. This is when you're struggling to talk, when you're struggling to answer your friend if they're chatting to you. So this is kind of running and skipping and tennis, step aerobics. This is when you might need to kind of improve your pelvic floor. This is where it puts a little bit of pressure on the pelvic floor, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. So we talked about resistance training, how important that is for bone health. We've talked about aerobic activity, how important that is for weight management. Any exercise that you do, just make sure that you warm up and cool down. All right, so just a little bit on balance. So we've talked about balance earlier, how important it is for longevity. So the British Journal of Sports Medicine have recently, I'm sure you've read, published, do a publication saying that when they've done a study involving 1,700 middle-aged participants, it concluded that an inability to balance was associated with almost twofold in risk of, can't remember what it says in death. Anyway, we need to balance to get longevity. So here we talk about Pilates, yoga, Tai Chi, Qigong, all really, really important that we continue to do as we, not just through the menopause, but and beyond. Okay, so we're going to next have just a little example of of a session. Now, you can do these sessions at home. You don't have to go to a gym. You can do them online. You can go to YouTube. There's lots of free content out there as well. What I would suggest is that if you are new to exercise, you maybe want to make sure that you're doing it correctly, because you don't want to injure yourself. But it doesn't take long, some of these exercise plans to do. It doesn't take a huge amount of time in your day. So this little plan that I've done here, it includes low resistance training, a little aerobic exercise, and some balance. And we're looking here maybe to do each exercise for between 30 to 30 seconds to begin with, maybe kind of moving up to 45, 60 seconds as you get stronger, and then a little 30 seconds recovery. Start with low weights and then start to build the weights up a bit as you get a little bit stronger. Start to do maybe 1 rep first of all, and then as you get a bit stronger, go to 5 repeats. And as I said, don't forget to warm up and cool down. So just a few little things here. Running on the spot's good for your aerobic. Some side squats as resistance bands is good for your bone health, for the resistance work. Jumping jacks, again, that's good for bone density, because we're kind of jumping on the floor, but it's good for aerobics there. So we've got lunges, again, using a bit of balance there, coming up onto one leg, bicep curls, jump squats. So you can really mix and match these up. You can do different sessions in the week, depending on how you're feeling. If your energy levels are a little bit low, you're not feeling so strong that day, you might want to do something a little bit more gentle, a little bit more stretchy. And if you're feeling a little bit more stronger that day, you can do something a little bit more energizing. So again, you can mix it up. And the great thing about doing these at home is you can do your favorite exercises. Yeah, that's what I like. You can kind of make your own little exercise plan and do your favorites. Okay. So don't ignore your pelvic floor. Now, this is going to be really kind of, I don't want to say depressing, but this is fact. And it's good to understand exactly what's happening here with our pelvic floor. Pelvic floor is like any muscle in the body. It needs strengthening. It needs constant strengthening. So doing it just after, let's say, doing it after exercise once a week probably isn't enough. You need to do it all the time. You need to do it every day. So 50% of women over 50 experience pelvic organ prolapse. Gosh, that's a lot, isn't it? That's half of us experience pelvic organ prolapse. Do we talk about it? Do many people talk about that? Do women? We don't talk about it. We need to talk about pelvic floor. 1 in 3 women experience leaking of the urine with sneezing, coughing, laughing, exercising. 1 in 5 women experience pain with intercourse. And this is really alarming. 1 in 5 women over 40 experience loss of stools. And often that can be down to trauma during childbirth, the episiotomy. Episiotomies that haven't had, full support of maybe the physiotherapist when you needed one. And again, it's something that we don't talk about, and it's something that women do experience. And I think we need to talk about it, and I think we need to do something about it for ourselves. We need to take action and do something about it. So if you are struggling with your pelvic floor, then you need to contact your GP. So need to be done daily. Don't just do them when you go to the gym, or you can do them walking, you can do them talking, you can do them brushing your teeth. I often know when people are doing the pelvic floor, because I can see it in the class when we do pelvic floor, they do the pelvic floor face. It's like this, a bit like this. That's the pelvic floor face. So I'm not going to watch you because I don't want to see your pelvic floor face. I want you just to do little pelvic floor exercises. Do you know, if there are any gentlemen on this forum today, you need to do pelvic floor as well. Just going to mention that now for your own pelvic floor health, for prostate cancer. So it's very, very important you do pelvic floor as well. So for women, just for now, this is just for the ladies, we're going to thinking about lifting from our back passage, so zipping from our back passage gently to our front passage and holding, and then kind of unzipping. Okay, so again, just doing that for me, just zipping from your back passage gently to your front passage and then release. So you've got the slow twitch. This is for when you're sitting on the M25 and you're in a traffic jam and it says, the nearest petrol station's another 20 minutes away, and you're in a traffic jam and think, oh my gosh. You need to use these slow twitch pelvic floor muscles. Okay, these are the ones that you're going to be able to hold everything in. So, you hold for 10 seconds and then you slowly release. Okay, and you need to do these 3 to 5 times. I say a day. No, you need to do more than that, maybe more than that. And then you've got the fast twitch muscles. So these are the ones, the sneezing, the coughing ones. These are the ones that someone tells you a joke and you laugh, you go, oh my God, oh my God. And so these ones are where you just lift and you release 10 times. So they're much quicker, your fast twitch pelvic floor. So again, you lift back to front and then release. So if you think the pelvic floor is a sling that goes like literally from the back to the front passage, you're lifting and squeezing this sling and then you're releasing. So kind of 10 times 10, we say kind of 10 times 10 per day. And then again, if you've got any experience of loosening of the stools, you need to think about the sphincter. So much more difficult, but you kind of start to look to strengthen your sphincter muscle, your internal and external sphincter. Anyway, we won't go on about, I could talk about pelvic floor day and you probably don't want to hear about pelvic floor day. So we'll kind of move on from there. So we've talked about how important exercise is, but also we need to include with the exercise, we need to talk about kind of breathing exercises as well, and relaxation techniques that are going to really, really help with your anxiety and stress. And we're going to do that a little bit later. We're going to finish on that, so we can finish on a kind of a really positive note today on how you can introduce some breathing and relaxation techniques if you find you are in a stressful position, you are feeling anxious at work or at home, and they're tools that you can use to support you in that. So on that note, leaving you with your pelvic floor, I'm going to pass you back to Tracy. Thank you for joining me today. Any questions on fitness, health, well-being, do let me know. Lovely to see you. I'll see you again in a few moments. There we are, Tracy. I'll back to you.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much, Ellie. And I think those tips are very helpful for not only those who are going through menopause, but also can be applied to us at any age and any gender. And I will also do some of these exercises to keep my body healthy as well. And we also have a final speaker, Tabby. However, Tabby cannot be with us today, and she recorded a 15-minute video. And I don't think the time allows us because we have so many questions. So I will play the video after the Q&A. If you want to stay, you can watch the video. But if you don't want, then we can record the video, and so that you can watch the video afterwards. So I will hand over to Anka for our Q&A.
Excellent. Thank you, everyone, for your fantastic presentations, and I hope it was fun to do the pelvic floor exercises, and I'm looking forward to Ellie's relaxation session later. So we have plenty of questions, which is fantastic because it feels like there's a real energy in the room. So we're all kind of on the same page here. I invite you to show your faces, which is brilliant. Yeah, so that makes it a bit more interactive. And I'm going to start by reading out some questions, but please feel free to add any question afterwards or to chip in if you want to say something. So you can either raise your hand or unmute yourself. So let's start with a question for Natalie. So really important question here. Did you have any pushback from the men in your workplace when you were trying to set up your menopause group?
No, none at all. And absolutely genuinely throughout the whole thing, no, absolutely not at all. And I think a lot of that came because we made sure that they had a voice in all of this. That was about making sure that we looked at them from that different angle of them being able to offload. We did a webinar from one of our male sergeants. He's a custody sergeant. He very bravely talks about supporting his wife going through it, and then his role as a supervisor, supervising others going through it. The men flocked to that webinar. Whenever we do stands at any of the open days, we have as many, if not more, men coming to our stands than we do women. They're desperate for the knowledge. It destroys relationships. It can really make things a mess at home. So anything that helps to recognise that and support them in the workplace, but for them to take that information home has been really key. So it was about making sure that everything we did, our comms were tailored to them too, and how that could help them.
Fantastic. So it's really the importance of having men as allies in this whole thing, and like as equal participants, because they are the ones getting, experiencing us, whether that's their daughters or mothers or wives or whoever, or partners. So yeah, really important. Thank you, Natalie. That's brilliant news, actually. That's great. So we're gonna, you'll be flooded with emails probably saying like, what exactly did you do? So brilliant, excellent. So then there was a comment, a couple of people echoed that, saying GPs need to be more educated and to be given awareness. So people were kind of told, yeah, well, you're going through the change, so that seems kind of a bit antiquated, that term. So Ellie, you talked about, Ellie and Zani, you're part of a team supporting the NHS. Ellie, do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, I mean, a couple of things. I mean, I think the NHS are realizing now really that they need to invest more in menopause support, not just GPs, but you know, throughout the NHS, practice nurses, you know, as Natalie was saying, that, you know, everyone needs to be part of this process, so it's management as well. But one thing that Dr. Kate says, who's our menopause specialist on the programme, is she says you can ask to be referred to a specialist. So if you feel that you're not being heard by your GP, there are specialists out there. There are specialist menopause clinics that you can access. So just to let, I suppose, you all know that is a possibility. But Azani, is there anything else that you wanted to kind of add in terms of the programme that we're supporting the NHS with?
No, just, well, I think some of the feedback we received from them is that it's unusual for them to get a holistic approach to the menopause, which is something that we provide, because we're talking about nutrition and lifestyle alongside the medical, whereas generally in the NHS, they are taught more around the medical support. I mean, we're really talking about how to support all aspects. It's like a 360 approach to the menopause, which is quite unusual for them to receive that kind of training. So we are doing it again this month, and we're doing it again next year. So they signed up for more, which is really positive, and obviously shows that the NHS is investing in this field as well, which is good news. Obviously, that's not helping the people that are currently not getting a good support from their GPs. But as Ellie said, there are menopause clinics out there, some places. We're in Southeast London, so we know there's one in Lewisham Hospital, but definitely ask. I also believe there are, there's often nurses that's quite good to speak with in the GP practice. Some of them are better trained around it. So ask whoever have the most knowledge on menopause and speak with them in your GP surgery.
Brilliant. And I think, Joe, did you want to add something? Is there something, do staff come to you for this and say, like, I need help, my GP doesn't listen?
Absolutely. And I think one of the key things is that we have those conversations together and can support each other in how to approach your GP. So we'll often say, you know, even just in helping to craft an email or a response and an anticipated response, and how to stop the kind of, quite often women say they're being offered antidepressants rather than being offered the support through HRT or lifestyle guidance. So it's almost just arming women with the knowledge so that they know how to have those conversations and be ready and prepped before they go into those appointments. But also just, I think this is such a growing area that hopefully GPs will gradually become more familiar with the way that this needs to happen. And I know Louise Newson is doing a huge amount of work to try and equip GPs with some decent training, because they're not getting that at the moment.
Yeah, exactly. So there's Jane, you have a comment on that?
Yeah, sorry, I meant to put my video on then, sorry.
There you are.
So my experience is with the GP, I was getting very frustrated at the pace at which things were happening. It was a real struggle to get a referral to the menopausal clinic at my local hospital, because they didn't have the expertise at my GP surgery. I was so frustrated that I ended up paying for a private referral. And through that private referral, I've had blood tests which I've had to pay for. I've had to pay for a prescription to be written and to pay for the medicines that are being provided. That is a really expensive route to go to. In comparison to that, I finally got a referral up to the menopausal clinic, and the advice that was given there was in direct conflict with what the advice that I was being given through the private referral. So, and that really is mainly down to the guidelines that they're restricted to within the NHS. So certain guidelines, for example, estrogen gel, they're not allowed to advise us to have more than 4 pumps of the estrogen gel, whereas that was in direct conflict from the advice I was being given by a private referral. They said you could have 5 or 6 pumps if you felt it was necessary. So it's really confusing, frustrating, and it feels like a battle to get the right type of combination of medication to help you through this.
Oh, and especially if you think about, like, not everybody can afford to
No,
go to a private
exactly.
clinic, and then having conflicting messages. That is probably you're not alone with this experience. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
much more educated. Hopefully you have a solution now.
Well, I'm getting there. I'm waiting for another appointment through the private route. So, but I'm not sure I would be able to sustain paying for this privately for much longer. So I'm hoping to try and get the GPs to listen to what I'm being given privately, what the advice I'm being given privately.
Thank you for sharing that. And related to that, Caroline had a comment here, which is very much related to that, saying, like, we are the ones who need to come armed with all the evidence and so we almost need to say, this is the treatment we want, whereas none of us probably is medical experts. So that's quite upside down, that whole approach to say.
So one of the things I do to help that is I record my symptoms daily. I record my sleep patterns and my symptoms daily, and what I'm eating and drinking daily, so that I'm armed with that information to go to the GP and say, this is what I'm doing, this is what's happening, how can you help me?
Yeah, and this is kind of, maybe not everybody is able to do that, but that's probably where you end up, and it's similar what Caroline experiences. So really, really interesting. Jo, do you have a final comment on that?
Yeah, just to recognise that real pressure on women to have it all sorted and manage to kind of navigate the minefield is one of the problems. You're already exhausted, already stressed, already anxious, and then having to somehow create a new little mini project on how to manage your menopause. So that's why this conversation is so important. And I think Natalie said the Louise Newson's Balance app, if you can capture your symptoms and go at least with a bit of help for the GP, so that you can say, this is what's happening, that's helping them to be able to support you. So there is a little bit that we can do our side, but ultimately we need research just to be increased, and for the NHS stuff to catch up with some of the private advice that's being given out. It's difficult, but this is the start.
Exactly, and I guess the more noise we make collectively, like as individuals, as organizations, the more that is clear that we need that support, because some of you talked about the cost for organizations. Like, there is an actual economic cost, people leaving their jobs, people being off sick. That is not what we want, and that can't be in the interest of any organization, really, or not of the NHS or the government. So making noise helps. Somebody also kindly recommended the Balance app. So Natalie, thanks for that. Right, so shall we, I guess we could speak alone a couple of hours about this topic, but in terms of fairness for comments, shall we move on? So there was a lot of, well, let's have a question for everyone before we move on to nutrition. So Jasmine said, do the programs that have been presented today address toxins, both in the workplace and general awareness rising? For example, in cleaning products, cosmetics, etc. So that's an unusual perspective. I don't recall anyone talking about toxins in particular. Does anyone have experience with that, or does anyone have an opinion on that?
From my perspective, Anke, it's thinking about training, it's people being aware, if there's brain fog and memory stuff, this kind of aids the cause about people being safe to use stuff in the labs. So in the university and research environment, there are lots of toxins available, but in terms of general toxins, I think people are becoming increasingly aware of how much toxin there is just in the day-to-day living. And short of kind of protecting ourselves in some kind of cocoon, we are exposed to toxins. I think it's just about taking on board all of that advice and understanding the limits within which we operate. But we haven't specifically done anything, but I think we're conscious of it in terms of health and safety and making sure women are safe to and have the adjustments in place to keep them safe, and thinking about our cleaning team and how we're supporting them, how are we addressing the issue of uniforms and being comfortable and being on your feet all day and using toxic chemical stuff. So it's definitely on the radar.
Yeah, Zani, you have a comment on that?
So I don't have any comments about how to reduce it in the workplace, but when I see clients in my practice, if they work with toxins and in cosmetics as well, we talk about how to support the detoxification of toxins. So that's something that I will address when I see clients, and it's a part of making sure that you have regular bowel movements. For example, there are some nutrients in the food that we eat. So things like cruciferous vegetables is known to have compounds that support detoxification. So I guess that's like a nutritional way of supporting this, but how to reduce them in the workplace, I don't have an answer for that, but I hope it's something that will change, because as Joe said, there is a lot of toxins, and I think we're becoming more aware that needs to be reduced in general, because we are overloaded with it. So there's, Jasmine mentioned xenoestrogens, which mimic estrogens, which is true, and they are in a lot of household products. So we recommend that you can scan. There is a scanner available, an app. It's called Think Dirty, which you can scan household or cosmetic products, and it tells you some of the compounds that are particularly toxic in there. So because it can be quite difficult to read that on the label, because who knows what is what. So there is these apps available that can kind of be helpful in reducing it, at least in your own household, and then hopefully the workplace would also catch up on that.
Excellent, fantastic, great. And Zani, as you just spoke, can you, there was also this question if you can share nutritional advice or some sort of script. Maybe you can, while we're talking, add this to the chat.
Yes, so I'll create a handout. I know there was a bit of information overload, so I'll create a handout just with some of the key things that you can send out with the recording as well.
Okay,
about the protein, the key nutrients that I talked about, where you can find them, etc. So I'll create a handout for that. Also, I wanted to say before to the GP that as part of our program, we do have a handout of how to approach a doctor's consultation, which we provide, which maybe can be useful with how to get the most out of your GP consultation. So we made a handout for that as a part of our program, which may be useful for people as well to add to it as well.
Much appreciated, super. One more on the medical question. So somebody asked, would medically induced menopause bring on worse symptoms? I'm not sure if any of us here, I mean, we're all not medical doctors, so I'm not sure. And what natural remedies can be taken for women who have had triple negative breast cancer and have BRCA1 gene? So that seems very specific. I'm not sure if somebody knows about this.
I couldn't comment from a medical perspective at all, but just from our experience of people sharing their stories, I think medically induced menopause, the psychological impact of the suddenness of that is one of the biggest things to overcome, and then being able to be ready with that support and getting all the right treatment in place. And then I'm very, very conscious of those with the BRCA gene or who can't take HRT, and we often get people saying, you know, there's so much talk about HRT being the answer. Actually, I can't take that. If I feel left behind, I feel isolated and lonely. So it's that messaging that it's not just all about the medical model. It's about your lifestyle. It's also about, you know, other things that might be natural remedies. So being very sensitive and careful that we don't just say, oh, everyone has HRT and it'll be fixed, because that's really not the case. So just from a psychological perspective, being conscious of that need.
And thank you for that, because you said that very clearly during your talk. It's not one size fits all. So it's kind of needs to be considered. Okay, so we move into the final questions. Some of us, including me, crave sweets. I've been very savory all my life, and suddenly I could eat cookies all day, every day. And it obviously shows on the scale. It affects my mood. It affects everything, like being over sugared. So some of us have this problem. We just suddenly love sweets. Zanny, any idea what we could do?
Well, yes. So maintaining a healthy blood sugar balance, which is one of the things that I talked about, making sure there's enough protein, healthy fats and fibers with your diet, it means that you are less likely to go on this roller coaster of blood sugar roller coaster. And the cravings tend to happen if you have been on a high, so maybe a lot of refined food. It can be already some sugary food, or it can be things that are just refined carbohydrates, which comes in like things like plain pasta, plain white bread, those kind of things. If you're eating that without adding proteins and fat to it, you go on this roller coaster. And when you dip, then it's when the cravings happen. So it is about maintaining a healthy blood sugar balance, and that's why we talk about it. This is not about managing diabetes. It's really about managing a healthy lifestyle. So again, that's why we talk so much about protein on our course, because it's really important for that as well. And those dips also cause fatigue and foggy head, and we're more likely to make maybe bad food choices when we feel a bit tired and run down because we need something to pick us up. So my main recommendation is to keep this stable blood sugar balance with these nutrients that I said. So protein is really key for that, making sure there's a quarter of the plate is protein. And then it's obviously also overcoming the mind, I want something, less that I need something. Sometimes we want something because we are maybe, you know, bored, or we need something to lift us up. That's another thing of it. But the actual bodily need to have something, we can do that with the blood sugar balance.
I remember when I was in your course, you had a nice term for this. You said, like, check if you're brain hungry or belly hungry.
Yeah, so there is a difference.
I do check that.
Yeah, so sometimes it is just that we want it more than we need it. And if you want it and you don't need it, maybe a cup of herbal tea will give you some sort of, I mean, I know that sounds like it's not the same as having a nice piece of chocolate, but it can actually just give us something to put in our mouth until our next meal.
Agree. Ellie, quickly a comment on just to say.
Yeah, I'm just really quickly on what Zanny was saying, is that I was somebody that used to just eat on the hoof because I was busy, I was teaching, didn't have time, grab a bowl of muesli, and I thought that would be enough. And since I've been working with Zanny on my Menopause Companion, I'm really kind of porridge for breakfast with all the seeds and the nuts, and then I have protein at lunch, and then I have supper, and I really don't get those blood sugar blood level highs and lows as I used to. And the other thing is that if you do get that feeling, maybe just walk around the block quickly. You kind of put in your zone 2 walking, you get a bit of fresh air, you have a little bit of a think, and it just kind of stops you from putting your hand in the cooking jar.
Excellent. Good tips. And related to that, somebody asked, are protein drinks a good thing to add, and any particular ones? I don't think we can promote a particular brand, but maybe
a protein drink. So if it's like something like Huel, which is quite easy to get hold of, it's not something I recommend. It can sometimes be useful if you're on the run, but what it doesn't provide the dietary fibers and all the other things that our body needs. So sometimes I recommend adding protein powder to a green smoothie, for example, or to your breakfast porridge to optimize the amount of protein you have in that meal. But I tend to not recommend it on its own because it doesn't provide that many other nutrients for you.
Excellent. Okay, and somebody says they tried Stoptober, never heard that. To stop sugar craving, and it actually, yeah, eating sugar does make you crave sugar. I mean, I guess we know that, but these are all brilliant tips. Okay, I think we addressed the main question. There was also questions about recipe books. Maybe Zanny, you can add that to your handout that you're sharing later. Like, is there a recipe or maybe a specific book you can recommend with nutritional information? And I'm now handing over to Ellie for, or is it back to Tracy and then to Ellie?
Ellie, maybe, I don't know.
I think Ellie, you wanted to do a mindfulness session, which I think would be great for.
Yeah, if anyone wants to just do actually a minute or two, just some time, just to take time out for yourself. Just turn off your cameras. Just find a really comfy spot, and we'll just do a little breathing exercise, actually, which you can use in the workplace, you can use at home when you're starting to feel anxious and things are starting to get a little bit up, a little bit. I'm just going to stop my video. Okay, so just finding a comfortable position. And I just want you to be mindful of your breathing, just your breath coming in and out of your body. Taking that breath gently in and just letting it leave the body. Just notice it if it's coming in quickly or if it's coming in slowly. Is it going out fast or is it going out slow? What we're going to do is just try and slow the breath down a little bit. So taking that gentle breath in through the nose and then slowly exhaling out through the mouth. And again. And as you breathe in for your 4, and you gently exhale for 6, be mindful if you're holding any tension in your jaw. Just place your tongue maybe gently on the roof of your mouth. Open your mouth ever so slightly. Just allow the jaw and the neck to soften. Just taking your focus now to your shoulders. You're finding your shoulders are around your ears. Just allow them just to settle and to release and to relax. And again, keep with this gentle rhythm of breath. Feel the breath drawing into the body. And as you exhale, just allowing the shoulders to soften, the jaw to release. Maybe taking your focus now to your back, to your lower back. Breathing into your lower back, into your lumbar spine, and then slowly exhaling. And again. Good. I want you to take a breath in for the count of 4. I want you to hold your breath for the count of 5. And I want you to exhale gently for the count of 6. We're going to do that together. We're going to breathe in 2, 3, 4. We're going to hold for 5, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're going to exhale for 6, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And again, breathing in for 4, 2, 3, 4. Hold for 5, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then exhale for 6, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Just coming back into your natural rhythm of breath. Just coming back into your natural rhythm of breath. Just feeling the breath drawing in and gently drawing out. Do you feel your breath is a little bit slower now? Maybe if you felt a little bit of tension around your jaw, your shoulder, your spine, you feel a little bit more released, a little calmer. Maybe you feel a little bit more energized. Maybe you feel a little bit more awake. When you're ready, if your eyes are closed, just open up your eyes, come back into the space, come back to the program. Thank you very much, everybody. Lovely. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Ellie. That should give us a SOS for if we need to stop and breathe and recollect. Okay, I'm very aware of time. Tracy, handing back over to you.
Yeah, so thank you so much, Anka, for chairing the Q&A. And I don't think that we have time to play our fifth speaker's video. Because she couldn't join us, and she has recorded a 15-minute video, and I will share the video with you all after the meeting. And there's also a link that I have just posted now. Please fill it and give us some feedback how you enjoy today's event. And it's really a pleasure to have all of you here. And thank you so much to our speakers and our audience. You are all brilliant. And if you have any thoughts and comments in the future, please write to me and Anka, and I have posted our email addresses there. And so if you are doing a research on gender issues or menopause, specifically in tourism and hospitality, please reach out to us. So thank you so much for joining us for the menopause event. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, everyone. And
Thank you. Thanks very much.
For the speakers. Thank you, Louise, for supporting us.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Just quickly, for those of you that are still here, I'm going to share the link via email because I'm conscious some of you guys can't access it through the chat. So I'll send it all to you out via email after the session.
Is that
Perfect.
a feedback link? Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Tracy. Thanks, Anka. Nice to see you.
Thank
to see you.
Brilliant.
Thank you. Thanks for the support.
Thank you.
Super.
Well done, guys. Excellent program. Really well done. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's nice to see so much positive feedback.
Yeah. Are we staying on? Are we going?
Hi, so thank you so much for having me, and I'm so sorry that I couldn't be there in person. I would really love to see all the other presenters and chat and answer lots of questions, but I've obviously popped my socials on the presentation, so if anyone does want to get in contact, please do. So I'm a newly qualified psychologist, so I've just finished my doctorate at University of Surrey and now going to be working in paediatrics at Addenbrooke's. And I'm going to be doing a whistle-stop tour today on compassion-focused therapy for menopause, which was the topic of my thesis. But first, I wanted to think a little bit about kind of why psychology and menopause and kind of how I got into this research. So I've always been really interested in this kind of mind-body link, how to stay well in a body that isn't always playing ball. And I've worked in long-term conditions, so things like chronic pain, diabetes, and when I started this course, it just so happened my mum was going through a really difficult surgical menopause, so I was very much inspired by her journey. And I suppose thinking more about, why would a psychologist be interested in menopause? I kind of want to introduce this idea, you might have heard it before, of the biopsychosocial cultural model of menopause. I know Myra Hunter and colleagues have done a really good job of sort of disseminating it. And I suppose this is how I visualize it, kind of these different domains of people's lives and showing kind of how they're really interconnected. And it really not only shows us the kind of wide impact that menopause can have on someone's life, but also helps us consider the factors that might help or hinder someone's experience and also guide what domains interventions could target. So, HRT targeting the biological domain, psychotherapy for psychological, but also the really important kind of policy advocacy, social justice interventions in the kind of social cultural domains. So obviously I'm interested in that kind of psychological domain and specifically thinking about, how can psychological interventions be helpful in menopause. And what we know is that for about 30% of people, the kind of increased stress of coping with menopause may progress to an episode of poor mental health, and that can be more likely if you've had difficulties with mental health in the past. And obviously, whilst all support should consider those biopsychosocial domains, psychological therapies are recommended by kind of all the major international menopause societies, which kind of led me on to the first part of my thesis, which is a sort of a review on psychological interventions for the menopause, I really wanted to get an idea of what's out there and how effective is it. And the first thing I noticed is that existing reviews really focused on the biological and physical aspects, especially hot flushes and night sweats, which I know not everyone gets. And to me, it seemed like a no-brainer that you'd want to look at the psychological outcomes of a psychological intervention, but clearly not. So that's what I did. And we found actually a really decent amount of studies when we were reviewing the literature, and there were randomized control trials as well, which is kind of considered the gold standard of research, and it's where you kind of compare an intervention to a control group. So it's really rigorous. So we found 29 studies in total, and so nearly 2,000 participants when we pulled all that data together and did a meta-analysis, which is a sort of fancy statistical technique. What we found is that psychological interventions for the menopause were effective on some of these psychological outcome measures, so depression and measures of general distress. But interestingly, we didn't find a significant effect for anxiety. And another bit that was really interesting to me was I was able to kind of pull apart what types of interventions were out there. So we found very much, you can see on the right hand side here, CBT, so cognitive behavioural therapy, really dominates literature. It's hard, kind of those hot flushes and night sweats, and is adapting kind of CBT skills for menopause. Mindfulness is kind of an exciting emerging evidence base, so there's less studies, and generally it's not menopause specifics, it's just kind of general mindfulness skills, but really long interventions, so a lot to commit to. And then there's the kind of behaviour change interventions, which are kind of just one technique, like relaxation being taught to people. So what did this kind of review mean? Well, obviously it supports the effectiveness of psychological interventions for menopause, but to me, it kind of spoke, maybe there's a bit of a room for improvement here, especially with menopausal anxiety. We know that psychological therapies can be really helpful for anxiety. So why not in menopause? Is it because it's really under-researched? And so this really led me to wonder about a type of therapy I'm really passionate about, which is sort of emerging, and it was developed by Paul Gilbert, and it, as the name suggests, compassion-focused therapy. It focuses on developing compassion, and it's really strengths focused as well, which I really like. There's some really interesting research about it being helpful for people with other physical health issues, so people going through cancer and pain, that sort of thing. And it involves developing what's called compassionate mind skills. So these can involve things like mindfulness and breathing and imagery techniques, where we're really starting to understand what compassion is, how we can develop it for ourselves, and how we can start implementing compassion into our lives and kind of use it to guide our thinking and our actions. And I think what I really like about it is it recognises that we can't always escape our own suffering. You can't kind of logic your way out of menopause, and uses this really nice metaphor of the tricky brain, or in this case, kind of a tricky brain, menopausal body, just not cooperating. And it kind of really validates that experience of suffering, and really starts by kind of reiterating that this isn't your fault, and essentially cut yourself some slack, some self-compassion. And as it says here, sometimes it's important for us to acknowledge the reality of life and find a way that we can work with this rather than ignoring it, fighting it off, or trying to block it out of our minds. And this is where compassion comes in, because it provides a grounding of wise and courageous faith for us to work through life's realities. So begs the question, what is compassion? And I invite you to kind of think, what comes into your mind when I say compassion? Maybe ideas of caring and loving, maybe kind of an image of a mother and a child, but also, especially for some people, there's ideas around it kind of being weak or fluffy, or kind of being a bit self-pityful, which is why compassion-focused therapy kind of clarifies this definition. And this is derived kind of from Buddhist-informed writings and from the Dalai Lama, and they define it as a sensitivity to the suffering of the self and others, and with a commitment to try and alleviate this and prevent it from returning. So compassion is about courage to approach suffering and our own suffering, developing wisdom to learn more about yours and other people's suffering and how to alleviate it, and the dedication to kind of keep at it. So to really kind of ram this home, I'd like you to imagine kind of compassion in action. Paramedics responding to an emergency. Are they selfish, weak, fluffy? No, they're demonstrating those qualities of compassion, that courage to approach distress, wisdom to learn about alleviating suffering, and also dedication and commitment to stay in the presence of that distress. So another thing that compassion focused therapy brings is a really excellent theory of emotional regulation, and it's called the three systems theory, and it's really based on some fabulous research. So what we have here is three main systems that regulate our emotions: our threat system, which is like our fight and flight response, our drive system, which is kind of our doing motivational system, and our soothing system. And what we can see here on the right hand side is that this threat system can almost get really out of balance. You can imagine how that stuff get really big, and definitely easy to see how menopause could do that with everything that goes on during it. And sometimes we can wind up coping in our drive system by kind of keeping busy. But actually what they found is that if we start utilizing our compassionate soothing system, we can start bringing things back into balance. And that's what those compassionate mind skills do. So there's not loads, but there's a bit of research around kind of menopause and compassion. A really nice paper by Susan Ellert, which talked about compassion being kind of a resilience factor, which I quite like, sort of very strengths focused, kind of building on your innate resilience factors that you already have within you. Ideas of it being linked. So the Brown articles as Australian research group that started looking at it being linked to positive attitudes towards aging, this sort of thing. And also there's a bit around kind of actually what we realise is high levels of self-criticism during menopause can be kind of quite a vulnerability factor. And in CFT, compassion is almost anecdotally considered kind of an antidote to that shame and self-criticism, which we can imagine being really coming up a lot during menopause. And so compassion focused therapy for menopause hasn't been experimentally tested in the UK as far as I can see. There is an Iranian study that found some really promising results for a group. And the other thing is that compassion focused therapy can be adapted to be online and be delivered in a self-directed way, which was really important considering I was doing my thesis during COVID-19 and we were in and out of lockdowns left, right and centre. So that's what we did. That was our research question. Can we develop a compassion focused course for the menopause? And what we're looking at here is just a very initial study looking at feasibility, acceptability and a signal of efficacy. And those are kind of fancy words for saying, okay, can we adapt these sorts of exercises for the menopause? Are people going to even sign up? Are they going to stick around to finish the course? And is there an indication that it might have an effect on some of the key outcome measures? And this is very much building on research from some other Surrey researchers, people who've come before me, so Catherine Wakelin and Becca Harvey, who did similar sort of CFT online studies, but in different populations. So we developed the compassion skills for the menopause course. It was a 2-week course. The first 2 sessions were kind of psychoeducation on menopause and also on compassion focused therapy, the 3 systems, what is compassion. And then after that, it was kind of daily breathing and imagery exercises that people would log on and do. It was about 10 minutes out of their day, so quite accessible. And it was all self-guided, and it meant that people could actually do it whilst we were doing during all the lockdowns. And so we had about 113 people sign up, so over 100 people. So we're really impressed with that, with our tiny little study. And after 2 weeks, we did have about half of those people stay around and complete it, and then a little bit more drop out at 1 month follow-up. So we had just under 40 people that we analysed the data for. As you can see already, we can see some limitations. Generally, it was very kind of heteronormative, white British, and really highly educated sample as well. So that's worth keeping in mind when we're interpreting these results. But we did see some really exciting results. We found improvements in menopause beliefs. So basically how you feel you're coping with menopause, certain aspects of it. Improvements in self-criticism is what we would expect to see in compassion-focused therapy, and also in self-reassurance, which is considered a really important part of self-compassion. And these represented kind of large effects, and they continued at 1 month follow-up. So we would say this kind of is considered kind of a promising signal of efficacy, but we'd need much more rigorous research to kind of claim that it's actually factually effective. But it is really interesting because CBT for menopause claims to work by changing these menopause beliefs. So it's interesting that this seems to have an effect on that as well. Does it mean that maybe compassion focused therapy could offer support over and above those menopause beliefs, so offering improvement in self-criticism and self-compassion. We also collected some feedback as well, and generally it was found kind of to be quite acceptable. And my favourite comment is the one at the bottom. I think every woman should have this in their menopause care kit when they first visit their doctor. So that was really heartening to hear that people found it, really, really helpful. Obviously limitations, we did have quite a high dropout rate. We did wonder whether this was maybe due to a bit of digital burnout during COVID-19, because everything just was on Zoom all over the place. And obviously time barriers were obviously cited as a reason for dropping out. There were some quality of life measures where we didn't see any changes, but then again, we did use a very strict statistical analysis. So I wanted to be really sure if we were seeing a result that it was likely that it was due to an effect. So we might be underestimating results a bit. And obviously, as I've said before, we didn't have a control group. This wasn't a randomized controlled trial. It's just that kind of initial feasibility study. So we can't claim it's effective, but it's a really nice indication that this could be a really exciting area of research. But yeah, so this was, as far as we're aware, the first study to investigate compassion focused therapy for menopause in the UK, and also to do it online digitally. Provides an alternative to CBT, which is kind of dominating the literature and is kind of quite strengths focused, really easily accessible. I know a lot of the previous studies have recruited primarily from London because they're sort of face to face. This is quite cool that it's could be accessed anywhere in the UK. Yeah, so really, really, really promising results. And I think, you know, indicates that actually we want to be looking more into developing and kind of honing these psychological therapies for menopause. But obviously that's going to need to fit within that wider biopsychosocial support, knowing that people have access to HRT or menopause physicians, that we're addressing the lack of provision of psychological therapies that's been found in the UK, and also making sure that everyone's menopause needs are included in this research and supported, you know, from healthcare advice being tailored towards specific communities, so Black women, neurodiverse folk, LGBT people, make sure they're represented. So yeah, and then I've got a whole bunch of references, but my thesis is online, so if people want to go and look at it, you're more than welcome to. There's quite long, but yeah, just thank you so much for having me. And again, sorry I couldn't be there in person, but please do catch me on the socials if you've got any questions, and I hope you have an excellent rest of the conference.